Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Portal Room. Today on the show, I'm joined by someone who spent his career exploring the outer edges of human experience and doing it with both scholarly rigor and a deep sense of wonder. Dr. Jeff Kripal is the J. Newton Rayzor Chair in Philosophy and Religious Thought at Rice University, where he works at the intersection of religion, philosophy, and consciousness, including the paranormal. He's the author of several influential books, including The Supernatural with Whitley Strieber, Mutants and Mystics, The Flip, and most recently, How to Think Impossibly, about souls, UFOs, time, belief, and everything else. It's a bold and deeply thoughtful exploration of ideas where often we're told not to take seriously, and why probably we should. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah.
Your work has been deeply influential for a lot of people in different arenas of thinking, I would say. But I have been looking forward to this conversation. So rather than spending too much time on formalities, I'd love to jump right in and explore some of the ideas that run through your book. So I have spent the past couple of days reading The Flip, as I let you know here beforehand, in
Okay.
preparation for the conversation. And it's already giving me so much to think about. And again, I have to apologize that I haven't started How to Think Impossibly yet. But for now, I'd love to jump right in and explore a line of questions inspired by some of my personal takeaways. So if it's okay, let's jump in, Jeff.
Yeah, let's just do it. Let's just jump. Yeah. I'm
All
happy to
right. All
I'm
right.
happy I'm happy to jump.
I love it. So you've spent much of your career exploring topics that seem to blur the boundaries of science, religion, and consciousness. Can you walk us through the moment or series of moments when you decided to take these questions serious rather than dismissing them as fringe or kooky?
Yeah, so I don't so I came out of actually a Catholic seminary in the mid or early 1980s. And then I went to graduate school at the University of Chicago from 85 to 93, and I was very much trained in the way we were taught to think about religion at that point, which was very what I call very horizontal. We were taught to focus on the social and the political and the psychological. Um, but there was very much, I also was very much influenced by this verticality, and I was always interested in the verticality and the otherness. I spent the 90s really working in what people would think of as sexuality and gender, queer studies, really. And then in the 2000s, I focused on the American counterculture. And it was at that point I started to encounter people who told me stories about things I knew that couldn't happen, but I knew they happened. And I also knew that academics didn't really have any way of thinking about these things. And so I got really interested in those phenomena, those experiences as historical events and as something we couldn't talk about in the academy, but that we should, particularly if we're trying to understand religion. And so I suppose it was the early 2000s that I turned around. But Paul, I never thought of these experiences as kooky or fringe. I mean, I'm kooky and I'm fringe, and the study of religion is kooky and fringe. So they just look to me like, oh, this is what people experience. This is pretty normal. I mean, it's not normal. It's not every day, but it's not kooky or fringe. Let me put it that way.
No, absolutely. And I say that, I guess, for the normies, but I did
Well,
want to ask you.
it's
Go ahead.
it's considered kooky and friend. I mean, people use the word woo a lot, and I honestly I despise the term. I think it's just a way to. It's a cop out. It's like I'm not going to think about that, so I'm going to call it a bad name. I mean, that's all it is.
Absolutely. Well, I did have a question specifically about the flip. You do say in chapter 2, you describe um the flipped scientist, right? So you even reference AJ Ayer, who became more open to ideas after his near-death experience. What do you think allows some people to break open their conceptual boxes while others stay locked inside of them?
Well, this is basically the basic idea of the flip. I mean, the idea is that it's experience that counts, and that when a scientist or engineer or medical professional has such an experience, they think very differently about these phenomena than they did before, and that there's something about these flips or these mystical experiences that is probably necessary to this new thinking or this new thought.
Well, I mean, I thought I'd ask because I was reading through that section and I thought it was very curious that it's always one specific traumatic event, or much like that near death experience that kind of just it propels people forward. So I was just curious to know, right? Another aspect though too, when reading your book, was the quantum and the mind and matter aspect. So quantum mechanics often gets invoked in discussions with psi phenomena. So, do you think the strangeness of quantum theory offers a legitimate framework for understanding consciousness, or do you think it's more of a metaphor rather than method?
Well, okay, so obviously I'm not a physicist, much less a quantum physicist. I'm not. I don't do the math, and I don't know the physics. However, I think. Well, I don't think. I know that we live in a different worldview now, and that quantum mechanics and quantum physics in general has have been rocking the world since the 1920s, and that the physicists themselves don't know what it all means. They debate about these implications constantly, and I think justifiably. And I what I'm trying to argue in the flip is that people who do history and philosophy or just think about these things, we do ourselves a great disservice if we live in a and we assume a Newtonian physics or a Newtonian worldview, because it just isn't true of the deeper quantum level of reality, and we're all expressions of that reality. You are an expression of that reality. I'm an expression of that reality, and it's very Newtonian. It's very up here. I get it. It's very ordinary or very banal, but down there it's not. And so I think what the quantum physics gives us is a new set of metaphors to think about reality and to think about these experiences. Do Is it the same? No, it's not. I don't want to say that. It's not all, at all the same. But does it give us a new set of metaphors? Is there a parallelism or some kind of resonance between the quantum physical ideas and the mystical or the paranormal experiences? Yeah, I think there is. But we don't know what that is, Paul, because we haven't allowed ourselves to think in that way in any systematic or full way. I know there are individuals who have made that argument, but it isn't part of the mainstream, as it were, yet, which I think it should be.
I absolutely agree. You also do say, or you've written, I should say, that matter is a construct of the mind. So I guess that would lead us into going further down that construct. Could you unpack that idea for listeners who might be new to it, and what it implies about how we perceive the material world? That was one of my biggest takeaways from the flip, was kind of deconstructing the whole material world as we know it. So can you break that down?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a long argument. It's a long and it's a philosophical argument, but the basic argument is that what the sciences and mathematics do really well is they give us this third person external view of things, and they abstract out from reality a set of laws or mathematical formulas, but that it's actually this inner experience that drives us, and that also needs to be explained or needs to be a part of this picture. And it's not, there's a big hole in the beautiful picture of science, as is often said, and that hole is us. That hole is subjectivity. That hole is consciousness. And what I'm trying to argue in the flip is that we need to fill in that hole, but the only way to fill in that hole is to supply this innerness or this I amness or this subjectivity back into full reality. And we need to stop calling it woo. We need to stop calling it weird. We need to integrate it back into our picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say that, you have implied the fundamental aspect of consciousness. So in terms of the woo, right, deconstructing that aspect, you've said that human science works because the universe is consciousness. So that's a provocative statement. What does that mean for our existence,
Well,
and how do we relate to reality?
yeah, I mean, so look, I have a lot of friends and colleagues who are the scientists and the mathematicians doing this. And if you really talk to mathematicians in particular, a lot of them are Platonists, by which I mean they assume that there's some linking or some resonance between the mind and the material world. And that's weird. That's super weird that we can essentially get a person to the moon and back with just numbers we make up in our head. And so that link between mental reality or the mind and material reality or the cosmos is the most fundamental resonance or correspondence there is, and it's actually what makes the science and the mathematics work. Uh, and it's a religious idea, Paul. That is a fundamentally religious idea of this resonance or this unity. And so that's what I'm trying to play out in the flip is that. Um, so that, I mean, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's really the argument of the book.
Yeah. Well, do you see human knowledge itself, as in the future of science and philosophy, as something emerging within us rather than discovered out there, would you say?
Well, again, so people push me. They're like, "Well, what do you think?" I mean, I don't know, Paul. And that's not, I'm not being rhetorically opaque or trying to dodge the question. I just don't know. And there are two basic, well, there are multiple positions, but the ones that interest me is this Pythagorean or this linkage between mathematics and mind, in which numbers are discovered. They're not invented. They're not created by the human mind. They're out there, and they're discovered in some kind of esoteric space. The other position, which I also find very attractive, is that mathematics is an experimental science. It's us. The math is us. The science is us. It's our math. It's our numbers. It's our science. And it's always an approximation of what reality is. It's not reality. It's an approximation. Um, but that there's something about the human being that is extraordinary, and we're feeling our way to this resonance or to this correspondence through these sciences and through this math. I find that really powerful on some, but it and this gets us. I mean, well, maybe we can get into this later. I see a UFO in your background there. This gets us into the UFO because one of the constant motifs in the literature or the folklore is that it violates our physics. that these objects don't behave physical laws. I'm like, well, of course they don't. It's us, it's we're seeing this. This is somehow it's a projection. And by that I mean, I don't mean it's Paul or it's Jeff. I mean it's some kind of cosmic mind or some kind of mind at large that is behind our social egos or our individual identities, and is manifesting as these forms.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to get into that. I did. I'm gonna ask one more question around this arena.
I don't. Yeah, I don't mean to.
Uh,
I don't mean to jump. I don't mean to jump to the. I mean, I of course, what I'll say is I love UFOs because nobody knows what they are, and people who say they know, they're either lying or they haven't actually read the literature, and so I love that topic, but it's not in the flip, by the way,
right.
you will see it's not there, and that I suppose is intentional, because I really wanted to talk to the physicists and the scientists and the engineers and the medical people. I didn't want to piss them off right away with something like that.
It's a good precursor, if you will. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, on the last point, in terms of consciousness, you've argued that modern secularism has stripped us of a cosmological orientation,
yeah.
as you were just saying. So, what might it mean for us to restore that cosmic sense of belonging today?
Yeah, so I mean that's an important part of the argument of the flip too, is that secularism, or this horizontal, flatlandish scientism, really, is fundamentally depressing, and it's dystopian, and it helps produce fundamentalism, or the very worst of religious expression. And so fundamentalism and scientism, I think, are two sides of the same coin. I think, one saying there is no meaning, there is no purpose, and this saying there's certain meaning or certain purpose. And the future to me is just setting both of those options aside as unworkable and unthinkable and not very persuasive, and going down the middle here and saying that obviously human beings are expressions of the universe or the cosmos, and obviously consciousness or mind is intended or part of the cosmos as well, because we have it, we're it, and the universe produced us, so it's got to be there, it's got to be in the cards, as it were. um, and once we take that move, I think we defang both the scientism and the fundamentalism, and we restore meaning and purpose to the universe. We don't know what that meaning or purpose is, Paul, but it gives us meaning and purpose, and it makes the human life livable again.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I can't even add on to that. Let's actually get into some of the paranormal now. So mind over matter phenomena, or what we often refer it to, paranormal and so forth, it's often treated as either superstition or science fiction, however you want to put it. How do you think our understanding of these phenomena might evolve if they were
Yeah.
considered fundamental science rather than fringe, if you will?
Yeah, so a couple things there. First of all, the word paranormal was coined in French in 1903, and it was coined by a scientist himself, and was not meant as a synonym for supernatural. It meant something like the supernatural, two words. It meant the natural world was behaving in a particular way that certainly was to the side, the para to our science or our scientific understanding, but it was not supernatural. It was just something we didn't understand yet. Having said that, I don't think science is the way to go here. I don't think we'll get there with science, because it's always this external third person perspective. And I think that erases these events. I think these events are about the subject, or about this I-ness, and I think taking them seriously, by which I mean listening to them, is fundamentally a non-scientific enterprise. And by that I don't mean unscientific, I mean non-scientific. It's just not science. It's something else. And so I think the future of human knowledge lies in that something else, and that both and, as it were, both that innerness and that outerness. It's not that we,
Absolutely.
it's not, Paul, it's not that, and I don't hear you suggesting this. It's not against science at all, but it's not science. So let's honor the science by saying what's not science, and moving forward with that. And I think the attitude that people have, I mean, just to kind of read people's minds, they think that the only form of adequate knowledge is scientific knowledge. I just think that's nonsense. I think that's nutty. But I'm a humanist. I work in a school of humanities, and that might sound self-serving, but I think it's just true as well. I think it's true of all of us. Is we go home and we love each other, and um, we act as human beings. We don't act as robots.
Yeah, absolutely. No, totally. Reason why I ask specifically is science and religion, it's often seen, or they're both often seen as adversaries, right? So from where you sit, how do you consider this question maybe? Do you consider that dynamic beginning to shift into something more diabolical, especially around some of the proclaimed, end of the world stuff with the mothership coming to Earth and so forth? What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
So first of all, the idea that religion and science are opposed is itself a story, and it's a selection of facts, of historical events. But you've got to select certain historical events and foreground them, and you've got to background all this other material, and just dismiss it or deny it to even get there. I don't think science and religion, or the external and the internal, are at odds. I just don't. Um, and I think the future, again, will be both that inner and the outer working together. Now, in terms of the contemporary future stories, they're virtually all dystopian, as you noted. If you go on your streaming service and you look for movies about the future, it's all shit. It's all bad. That nothing ever good happens. And I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, that's just not right. I mean, that's
Right.
uh, and part of it, Paul, is my own conviction in what we might call pragmatism, or we might call conjuring if we want to be religious about it. If you think the future is good, then it's likely to be good. If you think it's bad, it's likely to be bad. The culture as a whole now is likely to produce what it imagines, or what it thinks. And there aren't many utopian options out there on the entertainment channels anymore.
Absolutely. It's definitely a deterioration of whatever is happening right now. But let's maybe get into some UFOs now.
Okay.
So you've argued that thinking of UFOs only as extraterrestrial spacecraft is far too limited, uh, but that they challenge the very categories of mind and matter. So,
Yeah.
how do you explain what UFOs reveal about our need to rethink reality itself?
Yeah. I mean, this gets us into the dystopia too, by the way, because I think UFOs are fundamentally, at least they have been, are fundamentally about the end of the world. Um, but by the end of the world, a scholar of religion does not mean the end of natural reality. The scholar means something like a revelation, or a revelation of reality as it really is. And so, one of the things I talk about a lot is what I call radar and revelation. That if you look at the UFO phenomenon, yeah, you can do the radar, and there's physical effects, and you can do astronomy, or you can do physics, or you can do aviation science on it. But there's all this other weird stuff that you can't do any of that with. And you've got to, well, you don't have to, but I want to deal with the whole phenomena. I don't want to put it into pieces, break it into pieces, and pretend it's all extraterrestrial spacecraft, or pretend that it's all revelation and spiritual history. I don't want to do that either. I want to acknowledge both aspects and then move forward. And does that violate our sense of inner and outer reality? Absolutely. But that, again, that's its power. That's why it's important to think about and to talk about.
Exactly. And this does lean into the second half of this question. So, given your view on ufology or phenomenology, however you want to frame that, right? Um, how do you interpret the public's fascination and fear around these phenomena, especially when much of the conversation is filtered through competing frames? So whether that's whistleblower testimony, government secrecy, or outright skepticism, how do you
Well,
personally navigate between these narratives without collapsing the phenomenon into just one explanation? As you said, you like to put everything on the table, right? It's not just one phenomenon, but how do you, I guess the way I'm trying to frame this, how do you interpret all of these competing narratives is the best
well,
way I can probably
well,
frame that.
well. Again, I don't think we can. Um, this was my earlier point, that people who say they know what a UFO is, or they're either lying, or they don't know the literature, because it's all of these things. And it's not that there aren't intelligence concerns or military or aviation concerns here, or there aren't disinformation campaigns. Of course there are. It's not that the phenomena itself is not deceptive, that it's not throwing up illusions and stories and projections that we then take literally because we trust our senses. Of course it does that. So all of these things are in play, the human deception, but also the deception of the phenomena, or the camouflage of the phenomena. And I think we have to be savvy about all of those things. And my joke is that the scientists, or the traditional historian or humanist, they say that they understand everything on the table, but that's just because they've taken everything off the table that they don't understand. And I want to put everything back on, and to the point where we don't understand everything that's on the table, and we just say that, and then we move forward. Um, to get to your other question, I think the public is fascinated. And by the way, the public is fascinated. This is not a hypothetical. It's just the case. I think they're fascinated by the UFO because of this verticality. It's intervening in our world in a really dramatic and obvious way, and I think people are just utterly moved by that. And the problem with it is that people then believe. They believe instantly, and oh, it's this or it's that. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't believe. Don't reason either. Don't reduce it to your worldview, whatever your worldview is. And I think that's hard. That's really hard for people to do, because they want to reduce it to their worldview.
Well, in terms of that, because I always find the abduction phenomena very curious in terms of that, at least psychologically. What's your take on some of the abduction phenomena and some of the psychological framework on what we might be interpreting, or just your opinion in general?
Well, I have strong opinions about it. I mean, first of all, they're real in the sense that they happened. I think saying they didn't happen is ridiculous. Uh, and they're called abductions for a reason. I mean, that's my second point. The notion of agency or free will here, I think, is deeply problematic. Um, and they're often terrifying and destructive, but they're often also redemptive and expansive. And I think we have to keep all of that again on our table. So they're very real. They're very terrifying. Sometimes they're very ecstatic, and other times. Also, I suspect they're not what they seem. I suspect a lot of them are deceiving the human being. But that itself is really interesting to me. Camouflage and deception are signs of intelligence. They're not necessarily sinister, as I often say. Um, and so that to me is a real key to a lot of this. Is don't believe what you believe, don't think what you think. But clearly, these experiences are happening for a reason. They're trying to communicate with us. There's clearly communication going on. So listen.
Absolutely. From a humanities perspective, what does that say about how our culture responds to that specific phenomena or anything anomalous?
Well, again, I mean, from a humanist perspective, by which I just mean someone who works in literature or history or philosophy or religion or whatever that area is, it's the stigma around this that's really significant. Um, this word woo or this word weird is itself problematic and itself almost certainly epistemological, by which I mean it's us. It's a function of our own lack of knowledge of what's going on. It's not a function of reality or what's out there. It's really a recognition that we have the problem, you know. And this is what I mean. I refer to the impossible a lot. By the impossible, I don't mean it's literally impossible. It happens all the time. But I mean, it's impossible by virtue of our own categories and our own worldview. So just change the worldview, change your categories. I think that's what these experiences or these events are calling us to do.
That's interesting that you say that because you've said, and I read this in I'm not sure if it was the Flip or maybe a podcast I had listened to, but you've said before that the humanities should be restored through consciousness studies, almost like updating Plato's cave
Yeah,
allegory.
yeah,
So can you break that down? I guess going
yeah.
back
I
to
mean, and it's not that I'm romanticizing the humanities. I mean, the humanities as they stand now are very horizontal. They reduce the human being to the social or the political or the historical. And I think that's a deep mistake. Of course, all of that is true. We need to do all of that. But we also need this vertical or transcendent dimension. And, Plato's cave, I talk a lot about Plato's cave as sort of the origin, really the origins of the academy in general. And one of the messages of Plato's cave, the parable is don't trust the senses. The senses are not reliable. You're just going to see shadows on the cave wall. What you need is this mystical experience of the sun or light outside, and it's not what the fire and the shadows are doing on the cave wall with the prisoners. And I think we're imprisoned now. I think we're stuck in the cave, Paul. And I think we need to look at those people who've been outside the cave and to tell us what the fuller picture is. And by the way, the people who come in the cave from outside, we don't treat them so well. It doesn't go well. It doesn't go well at all.
you're not wrong there. You're not wrong there. I mean, is that fair though? I mean, is that a fair natural reaction from the people inside the cave? I
It's
mean,
cer-
you would expect.
it's certainly understandable. That's all they know. All they know are the shadows on the wall. And but here's the thing, Paul. We know from our histories and from our literature that people have been outside the cave. We know that. We have those texts, we have those reports. So I don't think there's any excuse for people who study history or the humanities to think that it's just shadows on the cave wall. But is it natural for those prisoners? Yeah, it is natural. It is to be expected.
Yeah, absolutely. And this adds on to another quote of yours that I really like is when you talk about epiphanies of the mind. Um, so where time seems to converge and the impossible starts to feel more possible. What are you pointing us towards in terms of that? Because you've broken down, right, the humanities perspective and Plato's cave and so forth, the allegory. What do you personally point towards personally for yourself?
Um, well, I don't believe in myself. When I say that with
Perfect
humor,
answer.
yeah, I literally don't believe in myself, by which I mean, I don't think there is a self that's permanent or ultimate. And so I just don't care. Um, but I do think, I think the moral impulse behind all of this, certainly for me, is the experiencers. It's that people have these experiences. So why are we ignoring them, and why are we telling them that it's not real or it's not true or it's an hallucination or some other lame excuse? It's just like, stop it. Stop doing that and start to acknowledge that these experiences happen. It doesn't mean that we believe the experiences, Paul. We don't have to sign our names to whatever the person saw or said, but I think we do have to listen and take into consideration in our thought and our theory and our culture what the person actually experienced.
Right. It's okay to exchange ideas.
Well, and they're not of course just ideas. I mean, the thing about abductions and UFO experiences is these are not these are
It's
not
the
minor.
experience.
They're not minor things. I mean, people experience light, with a capital L, or the whole cosmos, or the nature of the soul. They're not having coffee in the morning. They're not eating breakfast. I mean, these are major. These are epiphanies of mind. These are revelations. These are not minor things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always try to get the personal perspective, but I love the total dismantle of said you, right? And it's admirable. So I can't
Well,
really argue with you there.
yeah, and I have had one of these experiences, Paul. I mean, I'm happy to speak about personal experience, but I don't in the end. I mean, I think the personal experience, I was outside my body and there was all this light and subtle energy,
Could you get into that a little bit, possibly?
yeah, I can talk because I've written about it extensively. I mean, so this happened in the fall of 1989. I was living in Calcutta, and I woke up, but my body did not, and I experienced this energetic revelation, this energy, this amazing energy that came out of my body or came out of the room or wherever it came, and it started to do things to me. And it wasn't about me. There was no agency involved. It was something that was happening to me, and the result of it was I left my body. I had an out of body experience, and then I came back into my body, and I had what we would later call some kind of download or some kind of transmission. And all of the books that I've written really come out of that night, as I call it, with a capital N. So I have had that experience. I think that is my own flip. That's significant. I think, again, I don't want to devalue that or deny that or not talk about that, but I also don't want that to be the point of what I'm trying to say. I don't want people to quote unquote believe my own experience. It's not about my experience. I think that event made me deeply sympathetic and allowed me to listen to experiencers who talk about abduction or aliens or gods or demons or whatever they talk about. I'm like, oh yeah, that can happen. That did happen. I get it. um, so, but that doesn't. Again, it doesn't mean I believe their mythical or symbolic content or their language content, but it means that I am sure that happened to them.
Absolutely. Personal experience goes a long way, right? With
Yeah,
uh,
that's the flip.
yeah, exactly. And I just want to leave you. I want you to leave us here with one last question. If you
Yeah.
have to leave listeners with one question to wrestle with, one that could flip their perspective or open them to thinking impossibly, what would that be?
Are you asking me now, Paul? I mean, obviously you are.
Yes.
Um, well, one of the things I often say is don't believe your beliefs and don't think your thoughts. And The reason I say that is you probably have someone in your family or you yourself have had some experience that doesn't fit in to this worldview, whether it's a religious worldview or a rational or secular scientific worldview. And that means a great deal. I think that not fitting in is really what I want people to think about, is why is that inexplicable in terms of the worldview? Because it did happen. So maybe again we need to rethink our basic assumptions about space, about time, about energy, about ourselves, and about the nature of the universe. Really, it's these are really huge questions, but I think that's what these events call us to do, is to think about those bigger cosmic questions.
That may just be our process for evolution. So, Jeff, I really want to thank you so much for sharing your insights today. You've given us a lot to think about, not just about UFOs, anomalous experiences, but how we approach reality itself. So, for listeners who want to go deeper, I can't recommend the flip enough. Be sure to also check out Jeff's latest book, How to Think Impossibly. Um, Jeff, I do want to thank you so much again for joining me today, and hopefully we could do it again sometime in the future.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to, Paul. And the other book I always recommend here is Secret Body. And I wrote it. It's 2017, so it's 8 years old, or 2000, whenever it came out. It's a memoir. And the reason I wrote it was I realized that nobody's going to read all the books, and so I should write a book about all the books. And that's what Secret Body is. It's a memoir and a manifesto about what I really think, and it includes a story about all the books up to 2017 and a little after that, actually. It doesn't include the flip, by the way, but you can get senses of that there. And the reason I suggest that book is, once somebody reads into it, then you can kind of figure out what book or books you want to read. It's a really good map of things.
It's a good index, if you will.
Yeah, it's a memoir too. It's my life story. And by the way, I tell this Calcutta experience at great length in the book, and kind of why it's so important. So again, I don't avoid these questions. It's just, in fact, I write about them quite a bit.
Well, Jeff, I want to thank you again for your time. And
Yeah.
like I said, this was great. I really appreciate you answering a lot of my questions and bringing me back down to earth a little bit with expanding some of my thoughts. So thank you so much, Jeff. And everybody, thanks again for tuning in.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. I hope you didn't come too far down. I hope you still float out there.